Good morning. I'm Janet Vine, and I'm a member of Indivisible Yolo's steering committee. I serve as the secretary. I'm also the leader of the West Sacramento Action Circle, a subchapter of Indivisible Yolo. Welcome to our series of interviews for candidates for California's Congressional District 06. Today is Thursday, May 7th, and the time is 9:45. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Tyler Vandenberg. And I'll turn it over to the moderator for today's interview, Bruce Cutter.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, Tyler, for agreeing to meet with Indivisible YOLO for this 30-minute Zoom interview. My name is Bruce Cutter, and we'll start with a 5-minute opening statement from the candidate, followed by a Q&A session. And then we're going to save 2 minutes at the end for a closing statement as time allows. The questions were provided to the candidate yesterday in advance of this interview, so there should be no surprises. Let us begin, and Tyler, please take about 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Sure, I think I can keep it a little more brief than that, but we will see because I can be a little long-winded. Never tell a politician that they shouldn't talk more. It's our favorite thing to do. Um, my name is Tyler Vandenberg. I'm a 7-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I was a Jeopardy champion. I am a proud Great Society Democrat. For those of you on the call who are curious what that might mean, the Great Society was Lyndon Johnson's great program of civil and domestic works back in the 1960s. A time when the government instituted Medicare and Medicaid and expanded Social Security and built the Great Society metros and invested in the National Endowment for the Arts and in school lunches, passed the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts. And I believe that the government can and should do good things like that for everybody again. I am running in the California 6th. I have been at this for a very long time now, since the 4th of July of last year. And I am working very hard to unseat a man named Kevin Kiley, who I have no lost love for, and who I think is the wrong representative, both for the district he was in before Prop 50 and now for the district he's trying to parachute into after Prop 50. The simple fact of what I am doing is that I have three basic policy pillars, and they go like this. The policy pillars are number one, I believe it is time that we use the full power of Congress to hold Trump and his administration accountable. What that means to me is Congress has statutory powers of course, impeachment, but also investigation, subpoena, and even arrest, which we haven't used since the 1930s. I mean to bring every single one of those back because I think that some members of this administration, maybe all of the members of this administration, are going to have to wear orange for the rest of their lives when we're done with them. The corruption, the crimes in Washington, and the sabotage of our democracy are too big to overlook, and we have to be willing to take aggressive action the minute we take power to hold them accountable for those things. That being said, I also know that it's not enough just to go to the voters and say we're going to fight with the president and the Republicans all the time, which is why pillar number two is I believe in rebuilding our great society so the government does good things for everybody again. What that means to me is I have been a staunch Medicare for all candidate since the very beginning of this race. I believe the time is now to cover everybody in our country with health coverage and health insurance so nobody goes bankrupt, nobody has surprise bills, and nobody is in fear of getting covered for mental health, for dental care, for regular treatments at the hospital, for anything. I think it's wrong and we can afford to do better. I also believe in investing in homes that every generation can afford, young to old. Everyone deserves to be able to buy a place in our beautiful state where they can build their American dream. I believe in investing in a green new grid, in investing in our transit options. That means rails as well as roads. Investing in our education from K to 12 and in our UCs, CSUs, and public research institutes to plug some of those gaps in science funding caused by Trump's cuts and to lower tuition for regular students and to ensure that Social Security is secure long into the future. Finally, third and last pillar, I believe America should be a safe place for everybody in our communities. That means we're going to have to dismantle and prosecute ICE head to toe for its abuses of our immigrant neighbors so they can feel safe. But we also need to ensure that every member of our LGBTQ plus communities, including trans kids and trans adults, feel safe in our communities. We need to ensure that people of all faiths, colors, creeds, and backgrounds are welcome and safe to practice as they see fit in our country. And unbelievably, in the year 2026, we need to use the power of Congress to defend rather than attack the rights of women to vote and to privacy in their healthcare. Finally, of course, with the Supreme Court decision earlier this week, I think it is high time that we pass a new Voting Rights Act as well to protect the voting rights of minorities and particularly of Black Americans all across this country from Republican attacks. That's what I'm running on. That's what I believe in. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for providing me the time, and I look forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Now we begin the Q&A part of the interview, and so the next series of questions we're going to ask very. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. The first question. Please take 3 minutes to explain your position on issues specific and important to West Sacramento, such as climate resilience and infrastructure needs.
Yeah. Thank you for this question. So, as a Green New Grid candidate, is a big believer in an overall Green New Deal. And if you look at my campaign logo, which is a little guy hiking in a forest with some mountains and streams, I consider myself a big environmentalist. And what that means to me is that climate change is the biggest threat that we as a nation, we as people, we as a globe face overall in our lifetimes. I will likely not live to see the worst effects of climate change. I don't think most of us probably will, but our children will, our grandchildren will. And we have to take action now to not only forestall those effects, but to start winding down the causes of that climate change, like carbon emissions, methane emissions, and other such harmful activities. West Sacramento, of course, is particularly vulnerable to floods, which is going to be a huge problem as sea levels rise and the polar caps melt. But floods are not the only way that West Sacramento can be affected. I believe that one of the big things we need to do is we need to ensure that there is a robust power infrastructure in our state. This is why I bring up the Green New Grid. We know that with the expansion of data centers and industrial uses, West Sacramento is a highly residential place, but also has a lot of industrial and commercial activity. We need to ensure that we are building renewable energy that is sufficient to make sure that no one is suffering from brownouts, that we are not losing out on, say, air conditioning in the summer. Because, listen, it's 90 degrees in May right now. We know it's not going to get better by July, and that's not likely to get better over time as well. Finally, I think one of the big things that we don't talk enough about with climate change is that it's likely to drive further pandemics in our lifetime. We are going to need to invest in ensuring that everyone has access and everyone is cared for in our healthcare system, which is why I'm such a staunch Medicare for All candidate. I lived through COVID, and let's not have that kind of slipshod experience all over again. We need to ensure that we're investing in the public facilities and the public utilities so that people are cared for and taken care of both in disasters caused by pandemics and, unfortunately, in the natural catastrophes that we experience so much of here in California these days.
Great. Now, thank you. We've have a series of questions next that we want to ask for a brief answer.
Sure.
Yes or no, if possible. No more than 3 words, ideally. And after answering all the questions, we hope you'll use, we're going to give you quite a bit of time after that to elaborate on explaining the reasoning for the most complex issues and nuanced answers.
Okay.
And so I'm going to read the questions one by one and wait for your short answer. Have you or would you ever receive funding from AIPAC, pharmaceutical companies, oil companies, or any corporate PACs?
No.
Do you believe in meeting with voters at town hall events where constituents can ask live questions? And if so, how often?
Yes, absolutely. This can be 4 words. Hopefully monthly.
Okay. Do you believe that HUD funding should be restored and or that the federal tools such as regulations and tax credits be used to address housing issues and homelessness services?
Yes.
Do you believe Medicare for All should be an achievable goal for the Democrats when they next control the White House and Congress?
Yes, even sooner.
Okay. And as the U.S. representative, are there any specific legislative or oversight actions that you would support to limit the harmful or unjust activities of immigration and customs enforcement?
Abolish and prosecute.
Okay, so thank you for the brief and direct answers. And now, with the remainder of your time, please explain your reasoning. An explanation for the most complex issues, the nuanced answers for any or all these questions. If you've got your chat open, you can see they're summarized there in the chat,
Yes.
so you can remind yourself of the questions. And anyway, we have quite a bit of time here. It also gives a schedule there that closing statements at 10:13. So yeah, that's how long is that? It's,
We got some time. We're moving pretty
yeah, we
quickly.
have some time. You have a lot of time. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, thank you for putting these in the chat. Okay, so in order, AIPAC funding, pharma companies, oil companies, corporate PACs, absolutely not. I've been a grassroots campaign since the beginning. I have actually forsworn all of these explicitly since the beginning of my campaign. And so I am a big believer that, well, members of Congress shouldn't be bought and paid for when they show up to do their jobs, and we see so much of that in our current campaign finance system. The reason I am 100% small dollar funded is because I believe in doing things the right way the first time, and we need people who are going to stand up for average constituents and for normal people in Congress rather than for the interests of their corporate or foreign backers. And so that is why I do not accept any of these funds. Uh, Point number two, this is actually a big point of contention between myself and Mr. Kiley. Um, Most of you will not have had the misfortune of being represented by Kevin in the past, but I certainly have. And Mr. Kiley became absolutely infamous in the old California Third for refusing to ever hold town halls of any kind. Um, it got so bad that other members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, would come up to our district and host town halls in his stead because Mr. Kiley refused to do so. This is such an important part of the job of a representative, particularly in the House, right? Our senators, especially in California, are dealing with 20 million people apiece if you divide the responsibility in half. Whereas members of Congress, yeah, it's almost a million people, but at the same time, if you can't show your face in your community and you can't hear from the people you're representing, then you're not doing your job appropriately. So yeah, town halls are a huge part of what I intend to do. Lots of people will say, well, doesn't that require you to commute home from DC? Doesn't that require you to fly across the country all the time? Yeah, it does. And that's the responsibility that we sign up for. I think it's a question of willpower whether a representative is willing to show up for their constituents. And, I hope that my being here today is just an indication of how seriously I take it to show up for my community in the future as well. Um, HUD funding. Okay, great question. I am a big believer not only in restoring HUD funding, but my Housing or Homes for All Generations platform plank relies heavily on bringing back some tools that the federal government hasn't used in quite a long time. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s in this country, when we built the California that we all basically live in today, with lots of suburbs, we built them on a twin pillar kind of system. One was that the federal government would offer loan guarantees to property developers, to contractors, to builders, which would allow them to build these huge tracts of suburban housing, excuse me, the ones that currently characterize, say, San Jose or Sunnyvale or Palo Alto, they characterize all of Natomas and much of the greater Sacramento area, Roseville and Rockland after the 1980s, right? These areas were built largely in the aftermath of these housing guarantees. Now, the federal government got very good at supporting people to build suburban homes and then filled them with people coming home from the Second World War or from Korea or Vietnam on the GI Bill. But at the same time, we need to reimagine what this tool can do for us to build a California that everybody can afford, which is why I need to bring back the federal loan guarantee program, not just for suburban homes, which we're so good at building, but for condos, two flats, townhomes, the kind of transit centered, slightly denser housing that young people can afford to buy, that people who are new to this country can afford to buy, that folks of all means can afford to buy into to start building equity to then build their own American dream out in the suburbs someday. What that also means to me is we need to have preferential loan guarantee programs, just like for our veterans, but we need them for our first responders and our critical public employees. That means nurses, teachers, firefighters. These folks deserve to live in the communities that they serve. And in so much of California, that is an unaffordable imposition for people who work in our most expensive zip codes. I think that's wrong, and we need to have a remedy that the federal government helps us out with to make sure that people can afford to live in the communities that they work in. Okay. Medicare for all. This is a no-brainer for me. I have been a universal healthcare candidate since the beginning. I have been absolutely committed to achieving Medicare for all, signing on to the Medicare for All Act on day one. But also, I recognize that we may not have the filibuster-proof power in the Senate to pass Medicare for all right away, which is why, if we can't do that, I support putting waivers on California's Medicare and Medicaid funding, particularly Medicaid funding, which comes to the state as a cost share with the federal government, to help us to build a state-specific universal care, a CalCare program right away that the feds help us to pay for. I think the need is urgent, particularly in the aftermath of Republican sabotage with the Big Beautiful Bill and under the Trump administration to protect healthcare, not just in its current form, but into the future with the universal system, because there's no going back to the Affordable Care Act or the system that was working that we achieved after 2009 now. One of the most troubling things that I've heard on the campaign trail is that the Big Beautiful Bill Act was estimated by Public Citizen, a nonprofit outlet, about 2 weeks ago, to be likely to close 441 hospitals nationwide. In the Sacramento area, the hospital that is most likely to close because of the Big Beautiful Bill Act is the UC Davis Medical Center, our only tier one trauma center and pediatric trauma center between Oakland and Salt Lake City. This, to me, is an indication that the Republicans will absolutely never stop. The longer that we have a system of kludged together piecemeal solutions, some insurance here and some public health care here and some exchanges here, and some people aren't covered, and you don't know what your premiums are going to be year to year, and your coverage changes all the time. As long as we have this system, we will always be vulnerable to more Republican attacks. We know that the most efficient way to guarantee something for every American is to institute a big federal government program that becomes very hard to take away because everybody gets it. It's been that way with Social Security, with Medicare. It's a fundamental reality of American politics that the Republicans will chip around the edges, but once the federal government takes action to guarantee something and guarantee coverage to all the American people, it becomes much, much harder to get rid of. And in this current emergency, I think that is the necessary step to take. Okay, final question was ICE. Okay. So this is one of those ones where I think a little bit of history helps us as well. The current Department of Homeland Security has only existed since 2003. Before the creation of DHS and the amalgamation of 17 different agencies, Coast Guard, CBP, Secret Service, et cetera, into the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, these used to belong to different agencies. Secret Service used to work for the Treasury, for instance. And the fact of the matter was that immigration enforcement in this country was largely civilianized rather than heavily militarized the way that we see it today. The abuses of ICE of both American citizens and of our immigrant neighbors in this country is reprehensible and one of the great crimes of our time in this country. And there is going to need to be legal and political accountability for that. We're going to have to start with the leadership. People like Kristi Noem are no longer in power, but she definitely signed many illegal orders that I look forward to looking into with the power of Congress. More importantly than that, though, we are going to have tribunals, and we are going to have to break up ICE specifically and prosecute people who engaged in illegal behavior, of which we know there is a flagrant amount of abuse in the last year or so, particularly. Talking to nurses, for instance, who work on wards across the district, they say things like, well, ICE will break into the emergency room and then start demanding the papers of people who were treating and blocking us from doing our jobs, right? They'll try to do customs raids in medical spaces. They'll try to do them at schools now. Like, all of these are extreme abuses of the way that we do immigration or even law enforcement in this country. Lots of folks will say things like, well, you just want the criminals and the illegals to go free. No, absolutely not. My philosophy is simple. If you commit a crime in this country, we have an organization that deals with crimes in this country. It's called the police department. And if it so happens that you turn out not to have proper papers to be in the United States, then we can have an administrative process where somebody shows up with a clipboard and says, all right, You've committed a crime in the United States. You're not a citizen. Now we're going to start talking about deportation. But this running and gunning, killing people in the streets, refusing to show warrants, wearing masks, refusing to identify yourself, refusing to wear badges, all of that is an abuse of the most fundamental portions, fundamental precepts of law enforcement, going all the way back to like merry old England back in the 17th century. We have to be willing to impose consequences for these kinds of abuses, or this will just crop up again. And ICE is, I think, the best place to start for that. Oh, sorry, Bruce. I can't.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Thank you.
with we have a few extra minutes now, Tyler. So I have a bonus question.
Sure.
Um, uh, why do you think you will be the best candidate to beat Kevin Kiley in November?
Because I'm the only candidate who's proven to make him panic. Kevin and I have been engaged in a long battle for
Uh-huh.
the old district and now for the new district. I have been on his radar since day one.
Uh-huh.
I have it on good authority that Republicans I went to school with were asked about him, or were asked by his office about me within a week of me jumping into the race the last 4th of July. Kevin knows who I am. He's pretending he doesn't, but I can tell that he's watching what I'm doing because I'm watching him try to steal my policy talking points without making the administration mad. More than that, we've actually had encounters at this point. Kevin and I had a joint forum along with the other candidates in Arden Arcade 2 Thursdays ago. And I spent the time very calmly checking and rechecking his statements, where he said things like, "Oh, I'm an environmentalist. I believe in protecting the lower American River." I would immediately say things like, "That's interesting, Kevin. Less than 24 hours ago, you voted to deregulate the environmental certifications on new power plants. Would you care to explain?" He does not like dealing with me. Kevin has a long history of telling half truths, speaking very quickly, and putting his opponents, who are good, nice Democrats, both times that he's run, Dr. Kermit Jones and, of course, Jessica Morse in the last election cycle. Kevin has a history of putting them on the defensive by attacking, until they say something unwise, and then the Republican machine latches onto it, and then Kevin continues attacking. We make a category error with him. We spend our time trying to defend ourselves and say, "I'm a good person. No, no, I don't really believe that." And this is classic Republican talking points, right? They get up there and they say, "You want, grown men in young women's bathrooms, and you want to, ban the Bible, and you want abortions to be forced on every child, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And they just say all of these lies in a row. Defending ourselves and saying, "No, I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that," is the wrong answer. The right answer is to turn around and say, "Well, Kevin, it's very interesting that you bring up a bunch of things I don't believe, but how curious it is that you voted for a bill where you stripped Medicaid away from 107,000 members of your old district and then ran away from your old constituents trying not to be held accountable. How interesting it is that you pretend that you're an environmentalist while voting for harm to the environment. How interesting is it that you pretend that you're an independent while voting with the president 98% of the time in the first year. How interesting it is that you get up here and you like to tell us that you are no longer a Republican while receiving $150,000 from Mike Johnson's personal leadership pack to continue your run to hang on to this district. And why is it exactly that you've come down to a place where 70% of these people have never seen or heard of you before, and you've suddenly decided to represent yourself as something you're not? Would you care to tell the audience a little bit more about any of these things, Kevin?" This is why I'm the right person to deal with him. This man is slippery, he's smart, he's well funded, but he has absolutely no answer to the simplest move in the book, which is, why does your record say this? Would you care to explain to all these people you're trying to trick? That's why I'm the right choice.
Yeah, thank you. And now we just have time for a closing statement. Yeah, so I leave it to you to close.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's nice that we're nice to stay on time. I hope I can keep it under the threshold here. Folks, I really appreciate you having me here today. I run a people powered movement. Um, I think the list right now is a little over 90 volunteers. We door knock, we canvass, We put out literature. We run a strictly grassroots campaign, and it's working really well. Um, West Sacramento is, of course, new to me because it's new to the redrawn district, as every part of the district is new to this newly redrawn California 6th. And in getting to know the wider district, one of the things that I have discovered along the way is people are ready for someone who actually means what they say and who is going to show up to the battle that we have to have. The reason I am the right candidate for this moment is sending a Democrat to Congress, I believe, is important, but sending the right Democrat is the key. We are going to have to hold the Trump administration accountable. That's going to require a kind of aggression we don't see from every kind of Democratic politician. We are going to have to ensure that we are walking and chewing gum like never before by building Medicare for all and by ensuring that we're building homes that every generation can afford and investing in green energy and ensuring that Social Security remains solvent because that cliff is coming up pretty quick. And we are going to have to make sure that everyone feels safe and welcome in our communities, of all backgrounds and types and faiths and creeds. We are seeing the Republican attacks all the time. We are going to need to get assertive and to take action on that as well. All of these things will need to happen at the same time. They are not going to be easy. And we are going to have to make Congress work like never before to protect our country and to build a better future. I believe I'm the right candidate for that job, not just to unseat Kevin Kiley, but because my vision has always included all of these things, and because I haven't been bought and paid for ahead of time to go back on my word by corporate or foreign PACs. The final thing that I would say, I imagine every Democratic candidate in this district has mentioned to you the same thing, which is now is the time for a fighter in Washington. And you know what? I agree. And if you need a fighter in Washington, you could do a whole lot worse than sending a U.S. Marine. So thank you for your time.
Well, yeah, thank you, Tyler. It is vital for West Sacramento residents to have this opportunity to hear directly from the candidates in this race, and we really appreciate you taking the time to help us better understand you and this race for Congressional District 6 in California. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.